Colombia in the 1950s was in a period that they now call La Violencia. This was a decade-long civil war between their conservative party and their liberal party. It eventually ended with a peace treaty drawn up by the Colombian government. However, this deal left out rural poor citizens. This led them to create their own group, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, better known as FARC. Their main goal was to overthrow the government and implement a Marxist view in the new government. A Marxist government would eliminate social classes and would benefit the members of FARC. The Colombian government was in a state of weakness for the past decade because of the Civil War. These were some of the bloodiest days Colombia had ever seen, with death tolls higher than the revolution with FARC. The start of the revolution began right after the Civil War ended because of the unfair peace treaty. The majority of the war took place in the countryside, affecting the people who lived out there. So while this conflict was going on and placing them in danger, the final outcome didn't benefit them at all. The peace deal just stated that there would be shared power between both the main political parties. This event started the revolution because they thought that they had a valid reason for starting their violence. The Colombian government never fully lost control, but there was a time when FARC controlled hundreds of towns in the countryside. This is when they were at their peak of around 20,000 members. The way they were able to control these towns was through fear. They made all their money through extortion and drug trafficking. They're even behind some of the kidnappings and ransoms for several people a part of the Colombian government. This was the worst time for Colombia during the revolution with FARC. FARC went through many leaders in the last 20 years because the work they were involved with was dangerous. Some leaders were killed in raids, some through drug crimes, and other things like that. This is why they were more open to the idea of peace and putting down their weapons. Another factor for why they were losing control was because they lost over 11,000 members, which was over half their people, who were either killed or just left. The reintroduction of peace started in around 2016 when the government agreed to a peace deal with FARC to end the violence. They were once considered a terrorist group by their own country, but now pledged to end their attacks and become a political party. However, even though they acted as a political group, they are still heavily involved with Colombia's cocaine trafficking. They are responsible for around 60% of Colombian cocaine transported to the U.S. In 2017, they turned in all their remaining weapons that will eventually be melted into a statue to symbolize peace. It's hard to determine if this revolution was successful. FARC did end up getting what they initially wanted. The government promised to put over $40 million to the rural regions of Colombia. This revolution is said to have affected every family in Colombia in some way. The final death count was about 220,000 deaths, 50,000 people disappeared, and around 5 million people had to flee their homes. Since the peace deal in 2016, ex-FARC members have been murdered, which makes it hard for them to try and readjust to a normal life. I think the revolution was a success because they got the government to recognize all citizens, but they did this through murder, kidnapping, and torture, which was wrong.